Hello, I'll be sharing a simple financial comparison of the Magnificent Seven. So, what is the Magnificent Seven, or M7? These are the big tech companies in the United States: Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Meta, and Tesla. So, as you can see here in the screen, I just added numbers below each of these companies. Does anyone know what these numbers mean? So, each number here is the beta of the company. So there are two questions that can come from here. Number one is, how do we determine beta? And number two, what causes the beta values of the M7 to be different? Quick reminder before we start, what is CAPM? So CAPM is the total expected return for an asset. It is also known as cost of equity, and can be calculated by the risk-free rate plus beta times the equity risk premium. The equity risk premium here is the market return minus the risk-free rate. So before checking out how to calculate beta, let's go to Yahoo Finance, and we're gonna analyze Apple right here. And if you go to summary, we can see the beta of Apple, which is 1.07. So the method of calculating beta. Beta is the covariance of the return of the single stock and the market return divided by the variance of the market return. So what are variance and covariance? Variance is how much the market's returns spread out from its average. So a simple example here, if the market returns are usually 8%, but sometimes they're minus 10% and other times they're 20%, that market has high variance, which means it is jittery and unpredictable. And covariance is just simply how two things move in relation to each other. So basically, beta is a way of measuring how much a single stock reacts to the market's overall movement. The more the single stock price moves relative to the market's overall movement, the riskier it is. Simply put, higher beta, higher risk. So I'm gonna show you a quick way to calculate beta using Excel. So right here I have the stock prices for Nvidia and the S&P 500. The reason why we're using the S&P 500 here is because it is a good representative of the total market. And as you can see here, I only have 6 months worth of data, but if we go back to Yahoo Finance, we can see here that it says 5-year monthly for beta. What does that mean? So if you look at historical data right here, sites like Yahoo Finance, they usually use the stock price data for the monthly data. Right, you can change it right here, monthly data for 5 years. So there are a lot more observations here, but just for demonstration, I'm going to show you a simple example. So yeah, as I was saying, we have the Nvidia and S&P 500 here. And since, if you remember from the calculation, we have to have the return of the single stock and return of the market. So that's what we calculated right here. So Nvidia returns are like this. How do we calculate the return? Very simply, just as you can see here, the recent price divided by the price right before that minus 1. That shows the percentage change in the so-called next period. And then we do that for all of the dates here and for the S&P 500 as well. And if you remember from the formula, we have to calculate the covariance of the stock return and the market return. So that is done right here, covariance, stock, and market. And then we have to check out the variance of the market return, sorry, and that is calculated simply like that. So then if we divide the covariance by the variance, we get the beta, which is 1.2208 right here. And it's a very short observation in terms of time period, so the number may not be accurate. So yeah, until now we learned how to calculate beta. And if we return back to the Magnificent Seven, we can see that some betas are higher than others. This means that some of the stock prices here move more relative to the market than others. That means that some of these stocks have higher risk. Why is that? Although the M7 are all tech giants, they have fundamentally different business models and levels of predictability. So for this analysis, I divided these into three categories: the steady giants, the consumer tech, and the hardware and hype. So the first category, the steady giants, are Apple and Microsoft. These companies have predictable streams of income coming from sales of phones, computers, tablets, and in particular subscriptions like, well, for say, Apple Music or Windows subscriptions. So these kinds of products or services generate stable cash flows. So the stock prices do not shake as much when the broader market shakes. However, consumer tech such as Google, Amazon, or Meta rely heavily on digital advertising and retail spending. So when the economy slows down, companies cut marketing budgets and consumers reduce spending, which leads to the lower revenue of these companies. So that's why they have a relatively higher risk and relatively higher beta. Finally, for hardware and hype, which include companies like Nvidia and Tesla, they depend on physical manufacturing and supply chains. And also, they have relatively new emerging technologies such as EVs and AI. And Nvidia in particular is focused on AI. And AI is a particularly hyped to market, so investors are extremely sensitive regarding that. That is why Nvidia's beta is 2.24 and is way higher than the others. So thank you for listening to my simple analysis, and I hope to see you another time.